Okay, so in our class, today we would be looking at comparative theory of comparative advantage. And of course, previous classes, we were discussing about the theory, the classical theory, other two, theory of mercantilism and theory of absolute advantage. In our class, we will be going with comparative advantage as well as the Heckscher-Ohlin theory, right? So when we look from the perspective of an international trade, these theories underline the principles that would be followed in the international trade arena. Now, when we look at this table, there is a table in front of you. If you can look at it, you can find that there are production of two things which is being given, like cloth and wine. And two countries being put in the chart is France and USA. And if you look at the chart, you can see that you can understand that USA as a country is having competitive absolute advantage with respect to cloth and wine production. You can see that equal competitive advantage with respect to the so-called absolute advantage with respect to cloth and wine production. Whereas France, they are having absolute advantage with respect to wine production. So this is the context in which the theory of comparative advantage comes. Okay, when two countries are engaging in trade, the theory proposed by David Ricardo. Okay. David Ricardo, he came up with a theory which talks about it's not absolute advantage which you have to look into. Actually, he revised on that theory of absolute advantage and explained the theory of comparative advantage, quoting the case of, it was during 1815 to 1846. This was a context. He explained that in different countries' context, like in Europe, like in case of Portugal, France, like different commodities. But primarily, the theory, this theory was able to prove that the protectionist measures, okay, the Corn Law, which was introduced in Britain during 1815, actually restricted the import of wheat to the country. But David Ricardo, using the theory of comparative advantage, he could prove that it's not that you have to go with protecting a sector by just looking into the factors, the condition, the prevailing environment, but he argued that it needs to be evaluated on the basis of comparative advantage between trade relationship between two different countries. So that was a context in which this theory got popularity. But there are certain, before going into the actual theory, there are certain assumptions which were made to explain this theory. First is, of course, it is actually a international trade that is going or happening between two countries. And it primarily relates to manufacturing or importing of two commodities. The theory is explained on the basis, but on further revision, multiple commodities can be added to that, but primarily two commodities were involved in this comparative advantage, because to make it simple, and the relationship between two different countries were under consideration. And these two countries had homogeneous markets with respect to taste, preference, culture, all those. So basically, this was done in the context of Europe as a continent. So there is some kind of homogeneity with respect to culture, the food habits, the preferences, all that. Then here, again, the theory is simplified by considering labor as a only factor. You have capital as a factor. You might have many other factors depending on your condition, but this theory considered only labor as a factor of production. You are looking into only the opportunity cost that is available to labor as a factor of production. And so the price is ascertained on the basis of labor cost. That's a primary understanding for explaining this theory. So every opportunity cost, the price is explained on the basis of labor cost. And the basic assumption is other factors of production remain constant. There is no change. They're almost same between these two countries. So it's nullified, the effect of other factors of production being nullified, and only labor being considered for deciding the comparative advantage. Okay, so these are the basic assumptions made by David Ricardo when he went for this theory. Okay, the theory of comparative. Now we will go back to the table which we were trying to explain. When you look into this table, you can see that the two countries here in this context is France and USA. Okay, and two products they are trying to look into is cloth and wine, cloth manufacturing and wine manufacturing. And as we know, the theory takes care of only one factor of production, that is labor. So here the assumption is here USA in 1 hour they can go with 20 clothes unit. They have simplified that 20 units, maybe meter, but for explanation purpose they put it as 20 clothes, 20 units of cloth equivalent to 20 wine, 20 maybe bottles or barrel, or that weightage varies, but they have made it equivalent. So in 1 hour, 1 labor hour, USA can go with 20 units of cloth as well as equivalent 20 units of wine. In the same measurement, France can go with 5 units of cloth and 10 units of wine. So definitely in case of absolute advantage, USA is first, no doubt in that. But when you look up a comparative advantage, you are going to work up. You can look at the below table which is given. Opportunity cost for in case of France, you can see that for 1 unit of cloth, it will be 2 units of wine. 5:10. 1 unit of cloth, it will be 2 units of wine, right? And wine it is, if you take it up, it will be 1 unit of wine will have an opportunity cost of half unit of cloth. 10 and 5, this ratio, right? So definitely France will be having a comparative advantage with production of wine, right? Now we're looking to United States. For United States, they have both are equal, 20 and 20. So 1 unit of cloth will have an opportunity cost of 1 unit of wine, and the opposite, 1 unit of wine, they have an opportunity cost of 1 unit of cloth, 20, right? But see, this is absolute advantage, and definitely US is absolute advantage, has an absolute advantage over France with respect to cloth. Now we are going with comparative advantage. In comparative advantage, we can see that when we take up the opportunity cost for 1 unit of cloth in France, it is 2 units of wine. When we take the opportunity cost of wine, it is, as we say, 1 unit of wine. In France, it's just half unit of cloth. Whereas in case of US, it is 1 unit of cloth, 1 unit of wine, because for them it is equal, 1 unit of cloth. So absolute advantage is US first. When you look up from the comparative advantage, you can say that in this case, here in case of wine production, France is having higher comparative advantage, that is lesser opportunity cost with respect to production of wine. Why? Because they can produce only half unit of cloth with the same hour which they require for producing wine, 1 unit of wine. Whereas in case of US, they can go with production of 1 unit of wine at the same opportunity cost of 1 unit of cloth. So it's said, the theory says that, the theory argues that France should go with production of wine and USA should think of concentrating more on production of cloth because they have a comparative advantage. The opportunity cost for them is higher with respect to when you compare with France with respect to cloth production. For them, both were equal. So they can decide either going with production for both category, or if they're having good trade relationship, they can look for comparative trade advantage where they can give production of wine to France and concentrate on producing. So France can just drop the production of cloth and they can go with production of, as we say, cloth in USA. So this is theory of comparative advantage. It talks about comparative opportunity cost when you establish a trade relationship between two countries. Okay, now the argument here, Ricardo placed this argument. Basically, he said in the long run, suppose if they are not looking into this opportunity cost, if they are just going with both, in the long run, it will be according to he proved that with respect to the case of Portugal and some other nations where Portugal had a comparative advantage in wine production, and the other nations had a comparative advantage in production of, based on the comparative, some had clothes, some had some farm produce, likewise. So he proved that in the long run, nation will go with producing those products where they having comparative advantage, and other industries will slowly shut down in their country. So in this case, if France is looking into both, automatically in the long run, cloth industry will be shutting down and more of wine industries will be coming up in France because they have some kind of opportunity cost. They have lesser opportunity cost with respect to the wine production. Right. And what you have to remember here in this case is only one factor of production is taken care. As we say here, labor is the only factor. So the theory becomes complex when you take, that is considered to be the drawback of this theory. When you incorporate many other factors of production, the theory becomes a little difficult to understand. That's why Ricardo has just nullified and said, yes, you just look into, suppose. But then he has made an explanation to that there are different countries with different types of factors of production. For example, India is a country with labor-intensive factor of production. When you look from the perspective of US, they are capital-intensive. As they have more of capital, they are called as capital-intensive country. So in such cases, those countries, this rule will be applicable based on that factor, primary factor. But broadly, the theory explains only from the perspective of labor as a factor of production, and the opportunity cost is based on how labor is affecting, how the opportunity cost of labor is computed based on the two products. Okay, so once again, I come with the assumptions of this theory. This theory assumes that trade assumes to explain the comparative advantage between two nations, two products, and these two nations have some kind of homogeneous markets. Okay, and of course, other factors of production are said to be constant in both these nations. They are broadly explained from the perspective of labor-intensive industries. Okay. Then we went with the comparison of France and USA. You can explain, in fact, USA, why they are good in cloth manufacturing. One reason could be they are capital intensive. They have more technology, maybe more production technologies, more, as we say, more industries which are coming up the high-end category into textile manufacturing. All that can be reason. Say, for example, if I make a reverse comparison between USA and China, maybe for cloth manufacturing, China would be having some kind of comparative advantage because they are little more advanced with respect to labor. In case of, that's why production of textile, production of many of the manufacturing goods, it's cheaper in China. So they would be having comparative advantage. But here we made with a comparison of France and USA where we compared cloth and wine. And we can see that the absolute advantage definitely goes with USA because They have 20 unit of cloth and wine can be produced using 1 labor hour. But in case of France, you can see that they can go with only 5 units in 1 hour with respect to cloth and 10 units of wine with respect to wine. So definitely they are having a comparative advantage with respect to wine production. And that can be because this is one of the traditional industries. They have a lot of people engaged in wine manufacturing, and the climatic conditions and the other there are other favorable conditions that is favoring the production of wine in France. They have many vineyards, and they have been engaged in wine production from centuries. So that can be the reason. Reasons can be many, but it's explained like this. So then you are looking into the opportunity cost. And here, when you look into the opportunity cost in France, you can see that the opportunity cost for 1 cloth is 2 wine, because the ratio is 1:2. Whereas for opportunity cost for 1 wine is half unit of cloth, because again the ratio, we looked into the ratio. And in United States, both 1:1. So definitely France is having a comparative advantage as per Ricardo's theory with respect to wine production. So this is all about comparative advantage theory. Okay. Now, the next theory which we are going to explain is just an expansion of a comparative advantage theory. And in this theory, they have the problem which I mentioned here is there is only consideration of one factor, that is factors of production is limited to labor. All other factors of production are considered to be constant. Only labor being considered. Now the next theory, which is propounded, the Heckscher-Ohlin theory. Here the theory was first propounded by Heckscher in the year 1990. So imagine the date. This was from 1815 to 1846. And then the theory had its relevance till other theory. There were many other theories which came in between, but a major change from this was propounded by Heckscher-Ohlin theory, where the Heckscher suggested this in 1990. Bertil-Ohlin took that to the next level in 1924, presented that as a research paper which got wide acceptance among the academic community. And then the theory said factors of production affecting comparative costs can be different. Okay, it depends upon the availability of factors of production. That's where you take into consideration whether you are a capital intensive country, or labor intensive country, or any other resources like maybe a product raw material intense country. Availability of raw material is very huge. That can be one factors of production. Or maybe, as you say, labor. From our perspective, labor, abundance of labor is one factor. Or from developed nations like USA or Australia, where capital abundance is one of the major factor. So you have to look into those. So this is an expansion of the comparative advantage theory. The theory says you have to look and search for those factors of production where you have abundance, where you do not have a scarcity, where those factors of production is available in abundance in your country. For example, USA should be concentrating on those industries which is going with using a lot of capital intensive exports, capital intensive production, which can lead to more of exports. So they have to look for capital intensive or where those factors of production which you have in abundance, that should be selected for your exports. The production should be undertaken in those areas for your exports. You should never go with the exports with those areas where you have scarcity or shortage. So this theory talks about, suppose if you really find it very difficult, that could be one reason why India went with developing the service sector, because those are labor intensive sectors. We are exporting a lot of our services. But then we went with this theory. At a later stage, we came up with a lot of problems where our manufacturing sector almost went to negative production. So then we thought about another way of like inviting capital from different places, making our country attractive for investors, and then we are slowly moving into capital abundance areas also, especially with respect to manufacturing sector. So this theory, in fact, this theory tries to explain that you have to concentrate on those areas for your exports where you have capital abundance, and the areas where you have capital scarcity, you should go for imports. I mean, you should, areas where you have scarcity in factors of production, those areas you should select for your imports. So it's just an expansion of the comparative advantage, where comparative advantage is also explained by incorporating factors of production. In the first comparative advantage theory proposed by Ricardo, he just regarded one factor of production. So this theory moved further. It incorporated all the factors of production, tried explaining this the international trade relation in such a way that they said that your export should be on, or it should be concentrated on, those factors of production where you have in abundance, and your import should be related to those areas where you have scarcity in factors of production. Right. So I'm just relating that and comparing that with different nations. So for example, it is very easy for us to understand. We have labor abundance. We have abundance of availability of human capital. So it will be good for India if India is trying to export lot of human capital oriented services, because human capital oriented, most of it comes in the form of service industry. That's why India had a great boom. Now also our economy is dependent on service sector to a greater extent. So that's the theory. China, they actually, they go with lot of production. They have made lot of investments in their manufacturing sector. At the same time, they have abundance of human capital. So it's a combination. So they can think of lot of exports because they have factors of production, many factors of production in abundance, that is capital as well as human labor. So that's why their industry, you can see that a lot of manufacturing happening. At the same time, they excel in service sector also. But there are some areas where they lack, maybe with respect to farm products, with respect to availability of certain raw materials. For that, they go for imports. They go for trade relationship with other nations. US, they have shortage of human capital, yeah, and they are very abundant with capital resources, factors of production, which includes capital intensive industries. So they've concentrated with a lot of investments in different sectors across the globe, but lot of their labor intensive services or industries, it's outsourced. So you take the example of software, you take the example of business process, it's all outsourced. So the industry is living like that. But it has its own problem. That's a problem which we face in our country. It's very easy to understand. We were looking into the service industry and we had a boom for the last 20 years. But what happened to our manufacturing sector? The sector got almost down. Totally we were dependent on other nations for our manufacturing, which actually led us to a stage where we have unfavorable balance of payment, because we were overly dependent on other nations for especially with respect to manufacturing sector. So the problem here is there should be a balance. There should be a balance in such a way that we cannot, I'm just explaining the aftermath of this theory based on the present condition. We cannot only concentrate on the factors of production, which is abundant, and then do our industries totally dependent on those things, import the rest of it all from outside world. Why? If a country is just having abundance in one factor, then for all other factors, it will be dependent on other nations, which will create unfavorable that condition. Now, what we are doing is projects which are come up with the upliftment of the manufacturing sector. Let me India or as the startup India. There are many projects which been installed by the government for promotion of manufacturing sector. Yes, another thing is we had shortage of capital, so our foreign regulation or foreign guidelines were liberalized to attract more capital into the country, so that the problem of scarce capital can be overcome to some extent by doing so. So we made ourselves more attractive for the investors to come into the country and make their investments, so that our manufacturing sector can be brought up to a level where some of our production, some of our scarce resources can be straightened to create a favorable trade relationship. Because if the entire thing is being manufactured somewhere in the different parts of the globe, the problem is we will have an unfavorable balance of payment. That's the importance of having capital investments within the country. Likewise, if you take the example of different nations, they face the same problem. Say, if you look into the case of Israel, they have gone with lot of investments. That's why now investors are running to make investment with them, especially in ICT or infrastructure, computer-based technology and all. They've made lot of investments in this sector, in the AI, or as we say, latest development in computer-oriented technology, which makes them or which other nations are expecting them to be a powerful nation in the next few years. Already they are with respect to technological advancements. Now everyone is expecting little more high because they have gone with a lot of R&D investments in this area. They are supposed to be the one of the nation with highest investments in cyber security. Many of the countries, one problem which is all of us are facing is problem with respect to cyber security. That is one nation which they have gone with lot of, when making a comparison, the percentage margin is more than 50% in the area of cyber security, even with the other developed nations. So lot of investors are running to Israel for making investment just because of this. They have promising future in the coming years because of these investments. So likewise, India is trying to bring a balance in the manufacturing sector, along with upliftment of the service industry. And also we can see how we are going with improving the quality of human capital. That's one factor which takes care of the abundance. Suppose if we have capital in abundance, but if they are not capable enough to work in different sectors where there is need across the globe, then there is no use of that human capital. That is why you can look up how India is going with training the youth from the school level itself. Experiential learning, startup, or as you say, innovation councils, everything being formed in colleges and schools in order to ensure that we have quality human capital who can meet the needs of those countries which are having labor shortage. If we have labor abundance, if you're not able to use that for the need that is coming up across the globe, maybe for good researchers in science, for as data scientists, or maybe as IT professionals, if the quality is not met, nation will not come to us. They will look for other nations with with labor abundance. They will not come to India because there is competition. There are many other nations with, as we say, labor intense economy. So these investments can go over there. So if India has to do that, they have to ensure that there is quality in human capital. So this is actually the backdrop of these theories which are practiced in today's world. So these theories stand as a backdrop, where the modern developments are evolved based on the propounded theory. This is based on practical application. All these scientists have proved this using different examples. It's years of work. So Olin theory, they again further revised based on the changes in the economy, the expectation, the kind of trade relation, and it has been put into the modern theory category. But the theories have evolved from all these. So that's the importance of these theories in the context of international trade. So in nutshell, we talked about two theories today: the theory of comparative advantage, theory of Heckscher-Ohlin theory. Comparative advantage talks about going with production where you have some kind of comparative advantage with respect to opportunity cost in relation to factor of production called labor. Okay, just one sentence. I said that in one sentence. Comparative advantage between two countries in two products with respect to labor as factor of production. So that's the essence of comparative advantage. Heckscher-Ohlin theory, comparative advantage, again being explained in the form of two things: abundance and scarcity. You have to go with exports in the area where you have abundance of factors of production, and imports in the area where you have scarcity of factors of production. They have not only considered factor of production as labor in Heckscher-Ohlin theory. They considered all the factors of production, try to explain from that ground. So that's why it is said it is an expansion, it is an extension of comparative advantage theory.